Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:06. It's Wednesday in your nation's capital. Thanks for tuning into O'Connor and Company at 6:35. Cal Thomas will join us at 7:05. Lindsay Burke of Heritage Foundation. She's going to be testifying about public school spending. Then at 7:35, Guy Taylor, Washington Times on Gaza. But I don't know, Julie Gunlock. We're basically seeing the end of the republic right now because the White House Correspondents Association will not be able to choose who gets to be in the press pool or where they get to sit in the press room or other things that they do. They're still going to do their big fancy tuxedo dinner, though,
sure,
and pat each other on the back and things like that.
Everyone likes a party.
I don't know. Are you prepared for the end of the republic?
I have been preparing all night. I've been digging a hole in my backyard all night. I'm so tired.
You look exhausted from all of that manual labor. You should get the boys to do that for you. What are those lazy lima beans doing? If you're gonna build a bunker, go help your mother build the bunker.
That's right.
I don't know what to make of the White House Correspondents Association's. Well, they're martyrs, is what they are. They all actually, if you see anyone walking around town with little red circles on their palms with blood pouring out of them, as if they have been crucified, they are members of the White House Correspondents Association. The martyrdom is real. Here is the big announcement yesterday from Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. This would be cut one, Mr. Michael.
I am proud to announce that we are going to give the power back to the people who read your papers, who watch your television shows, and who listen to your radio stations. Moving forward, the White House press pool will be determined by the White House press team. Legacy outlets who have participated in the press pool for decades will still be allowed to join, fear not, but we will also be offering the privilege to well-deserving outlets who have never been allowed to share in this awesome responsibility.
Yeah, you can just hear the dictator tone from that, can't you? You can hear the venomous, totalitarian, anti-free speech, anti-media underlying message in that cheery, sunny little voice. Julie Gunlock, what do you make of this?
Well, more importantly, how brave are those media people to enter a room like that at the risk of their own lives, Larry? They truly are the heroes we need today to put up with such transparency, with such wide open arms, welcoming a variety of different media into that elite institution. My goodness, I really admire those people for putting on such a brave face and, again, risking their life to go into the White House and face Caroline Leavitt. She's just clearly out for blood. It is so absurd.
Have we gotten the list yet of those reporters who did not make it out alive, who have actually been detained and are in the dungeon there?
No. They're currently in Gitmo. They were flown there overnight.
They already sent them to Gitmo? See, I thought that there was a holding area first.
No. I mean, there's no due process. They just get them out of here, straight to jail.
Now, people might be confused because they just heard Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that the press pool is going to be determined by the White House press team instead of by the White House Correspondents Association, and legacy media will be allowed to join, but also well-deserving outlets will be invited as well, and they haven't been in the past. And you might be confused by all of the hysteria that you saw across the board yesterday about how this is the end of the First Amendment. By the way, the White House has been covered, and the First Amendment and freedom of the press was never threatened for decades and decades and decades before the establishment of the White House Correspondents Association in the first place. And you may be confused about that, too. Did we not have freedom of the press up until the point the White House Correspondents Association was established and they took control of these things? I know you're confused. Let's hear more from Caroline Leavitt. Maybe if you really listen closely, you'll hear how the First Amendment is being urinated on here. Here's cut two now, Caroline Leavitt.
As part of these changes, we will continue the rotation amongst the 5 major television networks to ensure the president's remarks are heard far and wide around this world. We will add additional streaming services which reach different audiences than traditional cable and broadcast. This is the ever-changing landscape of the media in the United States today. We will continue to rotate a print pooler who has the great responsibility of quickly transcribing the president's remarks and disseminating them to the rest of the world. And we will add outlets to the print pool rotation who have long been denied the privilege to partake in this experience, but are committed to covering this White House beat.
Okay, now I'm completely confused. Because what I just heard there was that they're going to be adding more outlets to cover President Trump. And here's the other problem. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong, and you know more about this stuff than I do, Julie. That's why you're here, for crying out loud, because I'm just an idiot broadcaster. You actually have real-world skills.
I don't know about that.
This is what I'm not understanding. I'm looking at President Trump. I'm looking at how he interacts with the media, how he interacts with the press. I'm looking at how much coverage he gets from media across the planet, from every spectrum, from every, like even beyond the news. You turn on sports and there's Trump. You turn on the Oscars and there's Trump. I mean, it's like everywhere, right? And I'm told that he's trying to silence the press and pick and choose who gets to talk about him.
He is signing EOs with an audience of media, an audience of press, of frankly mainstream media, that he invites into the Oval Office and signs EOs as the staffer stands next to him and gives him a little, blurb about what this EO, sir, you're signing this EO on this, and then Trump takes questions on each EO. It couldn't be more transparent. Larry, what we're seeing here is the death throes of a dying industry. And they are panicked. Yesterday, there was this little interesting. I was on Twitter all day watching this because it was so fascinating. And Reagan Reese, she actually tweeted that she heard people whispering in the press room saying, "They can't actually change anything, can they? They can't actually do this, right?" So again, this really is the death throes of an industry that has controlled the narrative and controlled information for so long. We're going to see this sort of panicking, and we're going to see misinformation about the changes being made here because again, they're in full panic.
Yeah, Peter Baker, New York Times, said, having served as Moscow correspondent in the early days of Putin's reign, this reminds me of how the Kremlin took over its own press pool and made sure that only compliant journalists were given access. This is what's interesting. And everyone's like, you all can say whatever you want. Obviously, and anyone can report on the president. You don't have to have access to the pool. Here, let me give you this perfect example, because you don't even have to look at Trump. Look at Biden for a minute. You and I, we covered the Biden administration pretty critically. We said anything we wanted to about Joe Biden, about his corrupt son, about his corrupt family, about the fact that he was mentally incapable, that he was incapacitated. You and I didn't have access to the White House press pool. We never got access. We never set foot at 1600 Pennsylvania.
That's right.
The entire 4 years of the Biden presidency. Did that stop us from covering Joe Biden? Did that stop us from being critical of Joe Biden? But here's the best part. Who did have intimate access to Joe Biden? The White House Correspondents Association. They were able to get inside the room with Joe Biden on a daily basis. And did they ever cover his mental decline? Did they ever cover his obvious physical disabilities? Never, not once.
Well, they did cover it up.
There was covering going on.
That's right.
It was some level of covering.
It's a different use of the word cover, but yes.
I suppose that's right. It depends on the definition of the word cover. All right, a little bit more on this. And also, my favorite part is the statement that was put out by the White House Correspondents Association. There were two statements by the president of the White House Correspondents Association, and those two statements tell you everything you need to know about this non-traversy that's being called a controversy over freedom of the press. And we'll reveal that in a moment. First, though, it's 5:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news.
All right, so we had a scathing statement from the White House Correspondents Association, as you can well imagine. President Eugene Daniels, the president of the White House Correspondents Association, Eugene Daniels, is also the White House correspondent from Politico. And he put out the statement that absolutely lambasted this, raised fears of the end of the republic, that the president can choose his own coverage, means that there won't be a free press in America anymore. And it reiterated the fact that the White House Correspondents Association is completely nonpartisan and impartial, and doesn't have a political axe to grind. They're just there for the craft of journalism. The second statement from the White House Correspondents Association announced that the aforementioned president, Politico's Eugene Daniels, will be leaving Politico to join MSNBC to co-host a weekend roundtable show on MSNBC. So the president of the White House Correspondents Association, an African-American man who wears pink suits.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And was rumored to be next in line to be the press secretary for Kamala Harris should she win the election. He is now going to be hosting an MSNBC weekend panel show, which I think those two statements tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah, Eugene Daniels, I remember when Kamala Harris did an appearance on some media panel show, and she was so dismissive and so rude, and there was this sort of viral video of Eugene Daniels looking at his fellow panelists, and they looked so uncomfortable, and you could tell they were shocked by Kamala Harris's behavior at that panel event. And yet they never reported on it. And that was sort of the story, that, you could see the reaction on these reporters' faces, that they were horrified by her behavior. They thought she was rude and dismissive. She didn't interact with the audience. And then there was no report coming out of that. So you had 3 members of the mainstream media, very powerful media figures, and they didn't report on it. This is all part of this cover-up. And yet this is who we should trust to get us information about our political leaders in this country. It's ridiculous.
Daniels was also quoted saying that they didn't get a heads up on this. They were very concerned that they didn't even, Caroline Levitt and no one from the White House told them about it. Now, 3 guesses here, but I'll actually only give you one guess. Why do you think the White House press team did not consult with the White House Correspondents Association and discuss with them in advance before they made their official announcement? Why do you think they didn't do that, Julie?
Well, I mean, I think it's obvious. Why should they? But you tell me. What is the reason?
Oh, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I think it was because they were afraid it would leak.
Oh, well, of
they
course.
would, it's like, right? I mean, obviously,
Yes.
it's like, we want to make the announcement. We want to control this information. We want to be the ones who tell it.
Oh,
and
of
if we
course,
tell the
of
people in
course,
the White
yes.
House Correspondents Association, they will leak it.
They'll leak it.
Because
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
can't be trusted.
Right.
So why should they give them advance notice about it?
And
again, here's
but
my
again,
favorite-
but really quickly. Meanwhile, Biden was incapacitated, and they kept that secret. No leaks there.
Right.
Again.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. There's no. Yeah, that one they keep a tight drum. Well, because national security purposes, of course.
Yeah.
Peter Baker of the New York Times went on this big diatribe. Boy, did he get ratioed on X, the Everything app, especially this part. He says that a president doesn't get to pick the press corps that's allowed in the room to ask him questions. And by the way, that's not what's happening here. They just said that they're going to rotate all of the outlets in and out on any given day. But that was juxtaposed with the image of Joe Biden at a press conference with a note card that had a picture of a reporter, the name of the reporter, the outlet the reporter is from, and a description of the question that the reporter was going to ask at the press conference. That's what Joe Biden. So they literally pre-screened questions, and Joe Biden picked the reporter based on what Jen Psaki or Karine Jean-Pierre told him that reporter was going to ask ahead of time. And now we're supposed to light our hair on fire.
And they were in on it.
You know that.
They were in on it. They were fine.
Part of the cover-up.
Yes, they were fine with it. They were like, oh, you guys should choose. So Peter Baker saying, the White House doesn't get to choose. Oh, yes, they do. And they did. And you guys were fine with it. It's so partisan. It's just partisan. That's all it is.
Of course it is. They were fine with the status quo before because they got to be in on it. They got their exclusives. Yes. They got their moment in the sun.
Because they were the chosen
selected.
ones. They were the chosen ones.
Now they're going to have to,
yes.
All they're going to have to do now is share time. That's all. And they don't get to control it. They don't get to be the gatekeepers. By the way, James Rosen got snubbed. James Rosen of Newsmax, because he asked the president a question about his age and about his mental capacity, because there was a poll in 2022 that said that the majority of Americans thought he wasn't up to the job. So James Rosen, as a White House correspondent, said, why do you think the American people believe that? Based on a poll. And because of that, he was not called on for 2 years. Where were his colleagues in the White House Correspondents Association circling the wagons and protecting James Rosen? Nowhere. And here's another great stat. Chris Cillizza deserves credit for this, believe it or not. In Biden's first month in office, he took 141 questions. By the way, I'm shocked he took 141 questions his first month. But it certainly declined from there. Do you know how many questions Donald Trump has taken so far from the press in his first month?
He took that many questions, Biden's number, in like the first 5 minutes.
Yeah. He has taken 1,009 questions.
Oh, you actually have a number.
In his first month. That's what Chris that's
that's what Chris
1,009 questions Donald Trump has taken. There's and meanwhile, by the way, the very same reporters who were screaming about, press freedom, they were openly discussing whether they should allow Fox reporters to continue to cover the White House because of their political bias in their coverage of the 2020 recount. Here's the bottom line for everybody, if you're wondering what to make of this. All the right people are angry about this right now in the media, and that should tell you everything. 523.
Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:37 on this busy Wednesday morning. Thanks for tuning in and being part of our show. You are the biggest part of our show, in fact. Wouldn't happen without you. It's 6:35. Cal Thomas will be our guest. At 7:05, Lindsay Burke of Heritage Foundation. She's going to testify today about public education. And at 7:35, Guy Taylor, Washington Times, about what's going on in Gaza. It's Larry O'Connor and Julie Gunlock. Julie, I don't know about you. I'm actually sort of having a Schadenfreude moment here as we enjoy the meltdown from the White House Correspondents Association.
It's a beautiful thing to watch. It really is.
Our friend Sean Spicer, and he really is a friend, I hate to admit, but I must admit it sometimes. He knows a little thing or two about the White House Correspondents Association. As you know, of course, he used to be the press secretary. He made a pretty good point. He made many good points. First of all, he was cheering this on X, the Everything app there on social media. He was very pleased with what Caroline Levitt did. He said this. He said, if you're a member of the White House Correspondents Association, you might want to direct blame towards your current president, Politico's Eugene Daniels, who proudly invited a Trump-hating comedian to their annual Love Fest, the White House Correspondents Association dinner. He didn't have to do that. They always have a comedian. It's sort of a tradition, and they tell jokes. But they went out of their way to pick somebody who was an absolute, complete, and total Trump hater. There's plenty of comedians out there. I've seen their stand-up who actually have admiration and respect. They could have gotten Theo Vaughn to be the host. Joe Rogan could have been the host of the White House Correspondents Association.
Well, and it could have been sort of good-natured ribbing. It was mean.
Yeah.
It was completely inappropriate.
Greg Gutfeld is the number one highest-rated late-night talk show comedian on television. He would have been a great choice to be the MC of the White House. Now, listen, I'm not saying that that's why the Trump White House decided to do this, but stop playing games by saying that you're just nonpartisan champions of the First Amendment, because we all know better. We see your behavior before our very eyes. If you want to point to a smoking gun, I'd say it's the Associated Press, who they're the ones who have sort of drawn a line here and created this standoff with Donald Trump.
If I can just say one more thing about that comedian and that White House Correspondents' Dinner. It's not just, it doesn't convey, when you have this anti-Trump comedian up there making these vile jokes, really aggressively mean jokes about Trump and his family and all that. What the White House Correspondents' Dinner or Correspondents' leadership forgets is that they are supposed to be informing all Americans, and that includes people who voted for Trump. And this making fun of Trump in this vicious way, it conveys to the American public, we don't like you. We don't like you voters. You're gross. And we're this little club, and we're only talking to Democrats. And they do this to themselves. They make themselves a hated entity in this country because they're one-sided, they're partisan, blah, you get it. So, I think they forget that their role is to help inform the entirety of the American public, not just their little club members.
Yesterday, President Trump was in the Oval Office, and the issue of the Associated Press came up, and we'll take a listen here, cut 5.
We're going to be now calling those shots. as you know, we won that lawsuit right there. See the Gulf of America, which is a beautiful name. Most people agree. I don't know. It's, AP has been terrible. I think they're radical left. I think they're third-rate reporters. I know the specific young lady that works on the account is terrible. She's a radical left lunatic, as far as I'm concerned. They don't treat us fairly. That's number one. And number two, they had no right to do that. This is the Gulf of America.
He's got a sign there that shows the map that says Gulf of America. And the lawsuit he's referring to was that, the Associated Press tried to sue the White House under the guise of the First Amendment to have access to the press pool, and exclusive moments like that in the Oval Office or on Air Force One. And believe it or not, a judge said, no, freedom of the press doesn't mean you get to get on Air Force One. The president gets to decide who gets on Air Force One, who gets in the Oval Office. Here's cut 6, more on the Gulf of America.
And if you look at that shoreline, look at that shoreline. Look, from Florida, well, most of it it's called America. And vast majority, like big numbers. So I'm just admiring it as I look at it. I'm getting teary-eyed, but I don't want you to say Trump broke down and started crying. No, how beautiful is that? Look at the shoreline. Look at that. That's America.
Julie, any conversation like this about the media and about reporters and about how Trump has defeated them, it's all going to lead to this, right?
That's right.
I hold in my hands my book, my first book, Shameless Liars, How Trump Defeated the Legacy Media and Made Them Irrelevant. But this all reminded me, all this talk about the Associated Press and the president and the press pool. I have a chapter in here about Joe Biden, about the 3 weeks in June where we were gaslit on a daily basis about the president's health, about President Biden's health. We all saw the videos from D-Day to Juneteenth, to the fundraiser in Los Angeles, to the G7 in Italy, all of these videos of Joe Biden completely losing it that all led up to that debate where finally Jake Tapper, CNN, and all the other White House people had to say, oh, wow, Joe Biden's losing it. At the press briefing, the first press briefing that Karine Jean-Pierre had, after all the videos hit, the first question about these videos was an Associated Press political reporter. His name is Will Weissert. I'm going to read you the question he asked. Listen to this question. There seems to be a sort of rash of videos that have been edited to make the president appear officially frail or mentally confused. I'm wondering if the White House is worried about the fact that this appears to be a pattern. So the question wasn't about the president's health. The question wasn't about what we all saw in the videos. The question was, the videos have been edited. Are you worried about that? That allowed Karine Jean-Pierre's answer, which was already pre-written, by the way. So she knew that question was coming. And her answer had to do with cheap fake videos, which was the new line that everyone picked up on. That was the Associated Press that did that, Julie.
There you go. Yes, and the Associated Press is leading the way with Peter Baker. No, he's New York Times, but with the right. Associated Press filing a lawsuit, their constant complaints that this is sort of, the Russification of America. It is no surprise that they are leading the fight, along with the New York Times and other really, dying media conglomerate.
If the AP wants some sort of sympathy here and wants to be treated like a member of the press and not a member of propaganda, maybe they shouldn't act like they're propaganda, like I just showed you, like I just read to you when they covered the Biden White House. Now, here's the big question. What else can Donald Trump do with his executive orders? He did a lot. Let's face it. We've seen executive order after executive order, and they range from the Gulf of America to securing the border to restoring the Keystone Pipeline. It's like, what else can this guy do? And then yesterday, well, he did it. He went after the law firm that Jack Smith works at. Jack Smith, of course, the guy who was hired, I think unconstitutionally, as the special investigator into Donald Trump's January 6 activities and the Mar-a-Lago documents. And yesterday, he struck back against his law firm. Here's cut 8.
At the outset of your administration, sir, you committed to ending the weaponization of government, to holding those accountable who participated in the weaponization of government.
Hold it. This is a good one. Is everybody listening? Deranged Jack Smith. We're going to call it the deranged Jack Smith signing for Bill. Go ahead.
One law firm that provided pro bono legal services to the special counsel's office under Jack Smith's leadership was Covington and Burling. As a result of those actions, we're now going to be suspending and putting under review the security clearances for the attorneys and employees at that firm who worked with Jack Smith's team. And we're going to continue holding the people who were responsible for the weaponization of government, who supported it, accountable for what they did.
And you'll be doing this with other firms as time goes by, right?
We're looking at sort of the whole panoply of options.
The weaponization of our system by law firms, even pro bono work they're doing just in order to clog up government, stop government. And nobody knows about it more than me. And hopefully that'll never happen again.
So Covington and Burlington?
Covington and Burlington.
Okay.
Mr. President, may I ask you a question about Europe? So long term, do you plan to maintain the number of U.S. troops
Wait, I
stationed?
just want to savor this one, please. Who would like this pen? Hey, why don't you send it to Jack Smith?
All right, so this was, a delightful moment where he, not only is Jack Smith sort of already been put on the sidelines, but now the law firm that did pro bono work, because of course this is how this game is played in this town, that these law firms assist these prosecutors in going after political enemies, and then they get rewarded with plenty of things from the administration and the political factions that they just served. So now one of the reporters said, hey, aren't you targeting people? Aren't you using the law to target people? Listen to this exchange. The nerve.
The nerve.
Here's cut 9.
Mr. President, what do you say to people who worry that targeting an individual firm or individuals who aren't Jack Smith for his actions?
I've been targeted for 4 years, longer than that. So you don't tell me about targeting. I was the target of corrupt politicians for 4 years, and then 4 years after that. So don't talk to me about targeting.
Thank you.
Good for him.
I love that. He's got
Honestly,
no
and
time.
I will tell you, Larry, in this town, security clearances are gold. They can bring in massive amounts of money and clients. And to see him, and look, I think these people are a risk to national security. I think some of probably the clients these people are taking are too. So, because it isn't just that he removed the clearances, he's now, ordered a system-wide review of the contracts that law firm is getting. So, this is great news to prevent further abuse. It's to prevent further abuse by these types of law firms.
It'll be painted as Trump seeks revenge for going after him personally, and he's an authoritarian. No, this is actually real government reform.
Yes.
In a big way. And listen, we've seen exactly what's happened at the law schools. We've seen the behavior of these law students and the faculties at law schools and their partisan derangement. And that filters right up into these law firms. And we saw that lawyers who took up the very legitimate constitutional cause of Donald Trump in 2020 over the method of recounts, over the drop boxes, over the validation of ballots, and tried to make the constitutional case that this election should have more scrutiny. Those lawyers who dared to take up the case were fired from their law firms. They were exiled from the law profession, and they were attempted. Look at what happened to John Eastman. And being disbarred. Lawyers are part of the problem here.
Who's Cassidy Hutchinson's lawyer? The one that, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name, but
who Liz Cheney did an end around on.
They tried to destroy him for doing his job. I mean, there's some real corruption in this city. This is rooting out corruption. It's not targeting. It's not him getting revenge. It's rooting out DC corruption.
It's also awesome. It's 5:53.